In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to add a text area. So down here under the travel report, I want to be able to have an area where they can type a whole report. So something bigger than a text box. So I'm going to use a text area. Now, a text area is not an input element, but it's actually a different element called text area. And if you put one of those in, then this is what you get. You get this box that allows you to type, but it's bigger than a text box. And notice that it has, right? So notice that as you enter, it lets you continue to enter, and it produces this scroll bar over here. So this isn't very big. We have control over how we set these, and that would be by adding attributes in the opening text area tag. So we can say how many rows we want. We can say, well, we want 200 rows, and we can say how many columns we want, and let's say we want 400 columns, and let's see what that gives us. So we did 200 rows. Okay, that might be a little much. We might not want that big of a form, and that's how big 400 is. So let's go back and say, well, we really don't want that many. How about if I do 20 rows and 40 columns? What do I get? And that's what you get there. So the rows are how many of these you get. The columns go across here. So notice that the columns are not as wide. There are 40 of them, and still they're not as big as the number of rows. So the columns, anyway, they're just different dimensions, the way they outline them. But you can specify how big you want it to be and give a text area that size. Now, if I want to label it, let's go ahead and say I want to label it, and specifically I want to label it with instructions. And I want to say enter the report about your travels. Okay, and that's what I want to be my label. And I'm going to go ahead and put 4. And here I need to figure out what I want for the ID. Again, that goes in the text area. ID report. And then I can put that up in the for attribute as well. And then I get the label. All right, so there's enter the report about your travels, and that label goes above. Now, if my columns is not so wide, then the label goes in front of it rather than above it. And remember that both the label and the text area, these are inline elements. So if I want the label to go above, then I need to put it in a paragraph tag. And so I put the label in one paragraph, and then I put the text area in another paragraph. And now when I do it, they line up. And still the label is connected to the text box. So notice I can click on the label and it activates the text area and puts the cursor in it. So they're still connected. They don't have to be in the same paragraph to connect one to another. They're connected by the for, that when the for attribute matches the value of the ID attribute. So they're connected. One more thing about text areas that you might know is you can type in pretext. So if I put text between the opening and closing text area, I can do, it shows up in the box. So whatever I want to put there, I can add that. Now when I submit, oh, notice with my text area, I haven't put a name attribute. So I want to identify a variable for it. And I want to say that this is the report. So I'm going to call the report variable. This is looking pretty long. Oh, yep, see down there it's 85 columns. So I'm going to start dropping this so they don't get too long. And then notice what I have here. So now if I click submit, then I get that report variable and whatever's contained there. Now, if the user has entered something, so my trip was great, and they really make it very long. So let's say that they just made it really, 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 really long. What's going to be submitted? Here I am just adding a whole bunch. Also notice that if they get too big, it doesn't actually ever run out of room. It just adds a scroll bar. So even though you specify how big it is, it can become bigger and bigger. Now when they submit, what's the value of the variable? It's everything contained in that textbook. In that text area. So that's the value of the variable that is reported.